Amazon was supposed to bring me a package today which would allow me to start live streaming with my good camera setup instead of having to use a phone or something. And instead it got bumped to tomorrow. And so I was going to live stream this, and I say that to say that this is somewhat unedited and I don't have this fully planned out what I want to say. So bear with me, because this is an exciting time for me, and I've got this different range of emotions right now about owning my own company and following my dreams and living in this creative world as a creator and as a creative that works in the business world and has to be paid. I've been doing this for 9 years, and I've gathered some experience along the way that I want to share with you, because I think you should follow your dreams, and I think you should do what you want to do. And if you're a creative person, and if you have some cool, unique skill that is valuable to companies, I think you should do something with it so that you can do what you want to do for a living. And there's somewhat of a give and take, because it's a rare situation where you just get to sort of be a commissioned artist and you don't have to worry about compliance and guidelines and contracts and things like that. But getting there is difficult. And so my experience, I've grown slowly, very slowly over the past 9 years, and I did it very carefully. And I took baby steps, and instead of taking giant loans and leaping into production and hiring a bunch of people, I've gone very carefully and taken very incremental steps to move forward. And over the course of this journey, I've learned a ton of things. But I think as I really dive into this next chapter and trying to get bigger, trying to step up and do more creative work with bigger brands, I've learned a lot. I'm reflecting on the journey that I've taken to get to this point. And I think there's something, what's weighing on me today is the game of business. And so when you go into business, when you start a company, there's this archaic set of conventions around how business is done, and contracts and the fine print and intellectual property. And a lot of these things are important. A lot of them, I think, are misguided and based on a world where people just sort of are out to take advantage of each other, and you need to really cover your own assets to make sure that you don't get taken advantage of. And to give you a little backstory, I started Boom a little over 9 years ago. And I started it with my buddy Jay. And it started because I was working for a marketing company who I watched overpay for a website. Like, they paid like $60,000 or something ridiculous for this website that had no interactivity. It had no like back-end portal for clients to log in and view reports. It was just like a digital business card, and they paid $60,000 for it. And then I watched my family's company do something similar where I feel like they way overpaid for a website that didn't really do much. And so we started Boom to address this. We started Boom to create something that was fair, because people didn't know better, and they're open to being taken advantage of, because there's companies that would do that and they're willing to pay. And so Jay and I started making websites where basically I would go sell and have the relationship, and Jay would program it. And really quickly, we started getting requests for like, oh, can you add some photos, or can you add some video to our website? We've got a company picnic coming up. We've got a press release, something. And so very quickly, I started doing video and photography and adding it to the sites. And then not long after that, Facebook pages had just come out at the same time we were starting, but they really started to gain momentum. And so this whole like create content thing and put it out there, not just on a website, but put it in some place where people will stumble across it. They will stumble upon it because they're just out on the internet rather than having to go to your website and see it. That took our business to the next level, because now we were doing content and social media was a much bigger market for it. So we got to grow there. And then over the course of like the next 6 or 7 years, we drifted away from websites and just bought in hard on social media and content creation for different companies, different brands. We would go and we would shoot and we would try to tell their story and put it online in an authentic way while avoiding some of the gimmicks. With social media, there were landing pages, if you remember, on Facebook. There were all these different things that came and went, and our strategy the whole time was based on, let's try to make something interesting, which kind of glides above all the other noise and gimmicks of of these platforms. And it worked out really well for us. And we made it to the point where I personally wanted to do more and more video, and I wanted to do bigger projects and cooler projects. I didn't want to be limited by the confines of, say, Facebook's video player or Twitter or any of these things. I wanted to really dive into filmmaking a little bit deeper, still doing it in a way that could tell the stories of small local businesses and large nationwide and worldwide businesses that have a cool story and that have something powerful behind them which guides their decisions, and maybe they're more expensive. And so I always talk about Prana, and I really want to work with Prana. And it's like the whole Follow Your Dreams tour is because I want to have a portfolio that I can show to Prana and be like, hey, look, this is what I can do. What can we do together? Prana is an example. They stand by their core values of sustainability, and being good to nature and their employees and their customers. And their stuff is expensive for a lot of people, but it has to be to support what they're doing. And that's important. And I want to say, so when you start your creative business, and if you want to go into this whole world of entrepreneurship, you got to have your core values defined, and you have to work with companies that have similar core values to you. If Prana worked with suppliers who, abused their workers and had awful track records, their business would crumble and it wouldn't be sustainable. And the same thing is true of creatives. And what I found is that I put my terms together. I put Boom's terms together to be very forgiving and to admittedly leave us kind of vulnerable. I didn't want to have long contracts. I didn't want to come back to people and be like, look what you agreed to. You should have read the fine print. I wanted it to be one page, simple. And to do that, I gave up a lot of protection for myself and my company. And yes, we're covered legally to a given point, but with things like pricing and stuff like that, there's some video companies that say, well, if your final video is 2 minutes long, it's going to cost X. If it's 4 minutes long, it's going to cost 2X, etc. And from my experience, if you film a video with somebody who's ready to go, who's, got their script rehearsed and everything like that, then it's pretty easy to say, it was quick. We did this in 1 or 2 takes and it didn't take much editing because you nailed it. And if you compare that to working with a client who isn't as prepared, and as they stumble through the script again and again and again, and maybe it's because they're not prepared, maybe it's because they just struggle, they tried to prepare, but they're just not good on camera, these things take longer, and it didn't make sense to me to charge the same price to both of these ends of the spectrum, or to find some average that would, be fair, where, the people who are really easy into this easy project, they end up overpaying a little bit to make up for the people who have these cumbersome projects that end up being the same length or the same quality. And so my pricing, I kept playing with it over time to try to really get it to where I wanted it, where it was as fair as possible. And what I ended up coming down to was an hourly pricing scheme, where we bill afterwards based on how long it took us to produce something. And that was the fairest thing. And I make exceptions to that from time to time for people who have, who are working with a grant or with a very defined budget to say, okay, this is what it's going to be. And there's some relationships I have with clients that's gone very well, and others it's not. And that's where I'm coming down to, is I love my terms and they line up with my core values, and I want to help people and I want to make cool stuff that tell cool stories for cool companies who have their hearts in the right places. And doing it that way has left me vulnerable. And I can say that over the course of the past 9+ years, there have been 3 instances of my 60+ clients that I've worked with. And some of those clients are agencies with whom I've done projects for a number of their clients. So it's not just 60 individuals. But of these 60+ agreements and relationships I've had, only 3 of them have taken advantage of me in a way that has bothered me, but it was something I knew was coming. It was something I knew would be a part of doing business this way. And it was something I knew I would take a risk with a project, and if I got hosed on it, it's something that I could swallow hard, eat the cost, and move on and know not to work with them. And this has served me well, But it's put me in a place, and so the whole point of this is to say that the past couple weeks, I've been in a place where I've had to write some uncomfortable emails, and it's taking me forever because it's not in my nature to hound people for money owed to me, but it is something that is a part of business where we've done work. We had terms that we agreed to, and because I've historically been very forgiving and tried to be really easy to work with, again, most of my clients and all my favorite clients, this works so well. I get called, I do work, I come back, I bill. It's a fantastic relationship that I've gotten positive feedback on from most of these people. And it just puts me in a situation where I feel like I'm wasting energy trying to justify fair treatment for myself just because my terms did not lay it out so clearly, because again, I wanted to keep it easy. I wanted to keep it fluid so that way if the project didn't cost what I ended up saying, hey, it's going to cost, say a project could cost $10,000. Yeah, we got it done. Things went really smoothly, and I can charge $6,000 or $4,000. Like, that's happened before, where I've been surprised with how a project has gone. And if there's a big savings of time where it doesn't take up as many hours as I anticipated, I absolutely don't want to just take that money and run. I charge fairly. And the same has been true where if a project costs, if I said it costs $6,000 and then it ends up doubling in scope from what they originally asked about, that puts me in a really uncomfortable situation. And so that's happened a couple of times. And my advice is you gotta swallow hard sometimes and write tough emails and have tough phone calls, but make sure that you put your foot down at a point, because being a creative and being a vendor, it's very easy for some people who I feel whose values aren't aligned with yours. It's very easy for them to say, well, we're not going to pay, we're not going to do this, we're not going to do that. And there's not much recourse you have. They've got the product, you've created something for them, you've sent it, and you're just sort of out of luck. And there's not a firm right answer always of like, well, you just don't give them the product and you walk away, because you've invested time and you've invested resources and you've formed relationships not only with the decision maker, but with other people who could be great to work with. And so this is the one thing where, as I set up my company, I've really, really struggled over the years, is doing business in a way that I can be proud of. Doing business in a way that I can look back and say, I was as generous as I could be, and I held true to my ethics and my morals on how a business relationship should work, even if that sort of diverged from what a traditional business would do in these situations or what a larger production house would do. It's put me in a situation where I've been able to do some incredible projects with incredible people, and those people have a lot of times referred me to other, you got to do this project, you got to work with these people. And I followed these referral trains to find some incredible opportunities and some incredible projects. And so I say all this to say, I've been talking to a lot of people as I've been doing this Follow Your Dreams tour and this sort of taking some time to build my own portfolio and my own library so that I can, continue to level up to the next brands, the next, tier of production. And there's people I'm talking to and I'm meeting during this process who are doing similar things, and they want to get into filmmaking, they want to get into creative work and agency work and stuff like that. And I would say, define your core values first. Do that first before you do anything else. Find out how you want to do business, what you want the legacy of your company, of your brand, of your identity, what you want that legacy to be looking back long term, and set yourself up to do business in a way that you can be proud of. And there will be headaches along the way, and there will be people who take advantage, and there's no way around it, but be prepared for it, because when you're prepared for it, you can have built in some ways of working around it, of leaving those projects behind, of giving yourself an out in your agreements and your contracts. But make sure you do things right, because even with all this preparation, and I had some great mentors as I was starting who put me in a place where I had, I had myself well covered, and even still, there were things that I could not have anticipated, and there were relationships that seemed fantastic that ended up being horrible. And sometime I'll tell you about the story where I hired a salesperson like 5 or 6 years ago, and it was awesome. I loved this person. They were charismatic. The interview went well. And as soon as I hired them, it just flopped. They did nothing. And it undermined my confidence completely. Where like, what did I miss? Everything looked good. Everything looked great. I thought I did my due diligence. I followed up with references, and this just fell flat. What did I miss? And so there's situations that come up like with that, and in this situation with some client agreements where there's no way to prepare yourself, and you question, like, how did I get here? How did I let it get to this point? How did I let myself get walked all over, or how did I leave myself so open-ended to things like this? You will have frustration, and there's not much you can do about it, but be prepared for it emotionally, and that's gonna help a little bit. And don't waste too much time carefully crafting emails to people who just don't care. That's it. Again, this was going to be a live video, and it's probably a little long, and most people aren't going to watch this, but if you made it this far, let me know. Let me know, because I've got some experience, like I said, running this business by myself, working for myself for 9 years now, and I've been asked by a few people to, like, oh, you should put that on you should put that on your channel, share these messages, and I don't know if anyone would really listen. So if you made it this far, like the video or something. Let me know in a comment, because I really appreciate that, and they mean a lot to me. Thanks for watching. If you're starting your own business, if you're gonna go down this road or something, message me. Shoot me a message on YouTube or on Instagram, and my brain is yours. If you wanna talk about how I did it, and how you could do it and what I would change, you are free to pick my brain. Reach out and let me know. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.